Good afternoon. It's Friday the 9th of April 2021, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today, Patrick Henningsen from 21st Century Wire. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
Well, we'll get on with the big news of the day, Patrick, which of course is the judgment in the European Court of Human Rights with respect to mandatory vaccines. And so just what's behind this? Well, first of all, it involves a Czech family, a family from Czech Republic, and others versus the Czech Republic. The press release says in the Czech Republic, there is a general legal obligation to vaccinate children against 9 well-known diseases. Parents who do not comply with this obligation without good reason may be fined, and children who have not been vaccinated are not admitted to nursery schools. In this case, some of the applicants had been refused admission to nursery schools, while others had been fined for refusing to vaccinate their children. The court found that the measures complained of by the applicants, when assessed in the national context, had struck a fair balance with the aims pursued by the Czech state, i.e. protection against diseases representing a serious risk for one's health. The ECHR cited the protection of others as the main justification for the exclusion of Czech children from nursery schools. But of course, there's also the issue of the inalienable right of anybody to refuse medical intervention. And what's ironic is, although this is the European Court of Human Rights, this is part of the Council of Europe, and this, if you remember, just a few months ago was what the resolution that they had made with respect to COVID-19 vaccines. Now, I appreciate that the ECHR case isn't with respect to COVID-19 vaccines, but nonetheless, the principle seems to have been laid down. And this resolution was about the ethical, legal, and practical considerations. And they said that with respect to ensuring high vaccine uptake, that they ensure that citizens are informed that the vaccination is not mandatory, and that no one is politically, socially, or otherwise pressured to get themselves vaccinated if they do not wish to do so themselves. That states ensure that no one is discriminated against for not having been vaccinated due to possible health risks or not wanting to be vaccinated. And finally, that states signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights distribute transparent information on the safety and possible side effects of the vaccines, working with and regulating social media platforms to prevent the spread of misinformation. But nonetheless, the key point here, transparent information on the safety and possible side effects of vaccines. And of course, what we're not seeing from the UK government or the British media is that final one. But it seems like there is a definite disparity between the decision of the court here and the resolution of the Council of Europe.
The key concept there is informed consent, Mike. That's what it really comes down to. What I think is interesting about the European Court of Human Rights, a judgment on this, they said that there's precedence should be given in favor of the solidarity with the community. It's talking about the need to vaccine. This is solidarity with the community. This is very much communitarian language. So this is a big departure from the normal post-Enlightenment Western civilization, sovereignty and so forth, common law in this country. So I thought that was interesting. And of course, serious risk to health, they're saying this takes precedent. But what if for a child, for instance, with regards to COVID vaccine, they're not at serious risk of any illness to COVID? Statistically, it's near zero. So that really wouldn't come into play there as well. But it seems like the media and politicians are just conflating all of this language, conflating all of these together.
Well, indeed, and the question then is, are they going to conflate this judgment on this specific instance in the Czech Republic and make it a much broader precedent? Well, we may be asking why the difference in position between the court and the Council of Europe. Well, the Parliamentary Assembly, of course, is inhabited by parliamentarians, and the court is inhabited by judges. Well, I just want to highlight this report here from the European Centre for Law and Justice. Now, this is an NGO. It has UN consultative status. It is considered a conservative NGO, Patrick, and it's also considered a Christian NGO, but nonetheless...
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure, yes, but nonetheless, what are they saying? It's obviously in French, their report here, which was published just over a year ago, and it's entitled NGOs and the Judges of the ECHR. Well, this is their conclusions from the report. At least 22 of the 100 permanent judges at the ECHR between 2009 and 2019 were representatives or members of 7 NGOs which are active at the court. They're lobbying the court, but it goes beyond lobbying the court or taking court cases. The Open Society Foundation NGO stands out for the number of judges linked with it. So 12 of the ECHR judges linked with the Open Society Foundation, and for the fact that it funds the other 6 organizations identified in the report. So the Open Society Foundation seems to have an inordinate interest in the court. It's bringing a lot of the cases to the court. But here's the thing. These NGOs have been involved in 185 cases since 2009. 19 judges had a conflict of interest in 88 of the judgments concerned. But there is no procedure to abstain from sitting in the court, and judges are not compelled to inform the president if their objective impartiality may be in question. So that's a pretty significant position, is it not? And well, who might be funding the Council of Europe?
Let me think. Let me guess. Who tends to fund these sort of organizations and institutions, Mike? One of the richest billionaires in the world, perhaps?
Well, 2 of the richest billionaires in the world, because here is a question from, I believe it is, and certainly an Eastern European politician. I can't remember which country this guy's from, but he wrote a question to the Parliamentary Assembly on the contribution of Open Society Foundation and Microsoft funding to the Council of Europe, because the Council of Europe, although it is sort of a pseudo governmental style institution, is largely privately funded. And so there is no question that there seems to be a massive conflict of interest.
So there's no checks and balances in this at all. Like there's no, you said it doesn't cater to the option of abstaining from a trial or a
That's right.
hearing?
You can't recuse yourself if you have a conflict of interest, and it doesn't look like people necessarily want to recuse themselves. Now, we've got to put this in a little bit of context because, of course, it could be argued that judges don't know which cases they're going to hear, and they don't necessarily know whether they're going to have one of the NGOs that they're involved with putting forward a case in front of them. But nonetheless, in the event, as the report showed, that has happened in the past in many cases, and those judges did not recuse themselves in those cases, nor did they declare the conflict of interest. So how is it possible to get a balanced judgment from this institution? Now, I'm not saying that there was a conflict of interest in this particular case because I don't know, but certainly the questions need to be asked once again.
Well, back to the Czech Republic case with the European Court of Human Rights. So that's a perfect example, right? we talk about how corporations capture the regulators,
Yes.
the government. But what about capturing the judiciary at the European level? Very powerful position.
Mm.
So you've got Bill Gates, you've got George Soros there. They've got a hand effectively, indirectly at least, or financially within the judiciary circle there.
Mm.
And then they're making a ruling saying that, no, you can't abstain from vaccines in the Czech Republic. You must, the state can compel you to take a medical procedure. And so that's where that conflict of interest gets very dangerous, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, so let's move on then to the continuing saga of AstraZeneca and 21st Century Wire here, your publication, Patrick, saying AstraZeneca halts COVID vaccine child testing while blood clot probe is conducted.
Of course. Well, this was reported by the BBC and many others here, and we thought this was incredibly interesting, Mike. Well, what they've done is basically halted testing here on this particular group until they work out what's going on with the issue of blood clots altogether. But this is what Andrew Pollard from Oxford University, what he said to the BBC was, there are no safety concerns in the pediatric clinical trial. We await additional information from the MHRA on its review of rare cases of thrombosis and other conditions here reported on adults, Mike, with regards to delaying any further vaccine trials.
That's a very interesting statement that he's made there. So if we can just focus on that, we will be mentioning this in a minute or so, but there are no safety concerns in the pediatric clinical trial. Well, let's just see what the MHRA and the JCVI have to say on that in a minute.
Right, right. So further from this, so this was a big story. Obviously, everything with AstraZeneca has been dominating the headlines. But how does the Times spin it? The Times newspaper, Murdoch's Times, which a lot of people regard quite widely, in fact, as the in-house newsletter of the deep state, behind a paywall. Let's look at what they're saying there at the Times. You got to love this headline, Mike. Warning about coronavirus vaccine and clots is a sign that our system is working.
Yeah.
So a really great positive spin on that. Let's take a look at what they're saying here. The efficacy of a vaccine program is not just a percentage figure. Mike, no, no, no. It is not just about antibodies and T cells. They hardly ever talk about those, don't they? It is also about something far more elusive and far more fragile, faith.
Faith.
So this is
We
like,
must have faith.
this is like a religious rhetoric here. This is the way the media is covering this now. It's becoming like a religion. The vaccine is like the communion, as it were, Mike. So we're going to give this a big Rosetta here. This is our new award. You'll see more of these in the future for propaganda. And you can see there's a lovely fetching picture of Mr. Joseph Goebbels there in the middle of the rosette. Yeah, we're going to give that a big Rosetta, but it doesn't stop there, does it? After clinical trials had finished, we were never going to find a higher number of serious side effects. This is the author, Tom Whipple, saying this.
Yeah.
By definition, anything that did appear once mass vaccination started had to be rare enough that it had not been spotted in trials of tens of thousands of people. That's an incredible bit of gymnastics.
Well, it is on many levels, but have the trials finished?
Well, this is the point. This is the point. When notice the past tense here. Let's look at that. After the clinical trials had finished, past tense.
Yes.
But have they finished?
No, no.
When do they finish? 2023.
It depends on which vaccine it is. 2023, 2024, 2025, sometime around that sort of time. Yes.
They won't state the obvious, which is that the clinical trials are being done on the public. Okay. And then finally, the fact that regulators are doing their job. I love that. That they are testing, teasing out and analyzing these extremely rare signals in the data, these injuries. There are nothing more than extremely rare signals now. They should boost our faith, again, there's that word faith, in the system. This is a sign that things are working. This is great news, according to the Times, isn't it? What an amazing piece of spin there.
And one of the key points here, Patrick, isn't it, is, of course, all the focus is on blood clots. Now, if you look at the yellow card data from the MHRA, which, if you can find it, it's not exactly transparent or easy to find, or it is transparent because it's very difficult to find. But anyway, nonetheless, it is there if you search hard enough for it. Of course, blood clots are on the list, but there are many, many other conditions on the list, including heart attacks, strokes, a whole range of different side effects and adverse reactions. The focus on one single implies to the general public that haven't done their research, as it were, that there's really only one side effect that we need to be worried about. In fact, there are many, many more.
And look at the full court press. Everyone in government media, they're all jumping on the blood to squash the issue of blood clots.
Yes.
And then you're saying that if they can manage to squash that, then they'll sort of declare victory.
Yes.
That it's 100% safe.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at this then. This is Le Monde. The headline is in French, of course. Let's translate it. European Medicine Agency recognizes link between vaccine and very rare cases of thrombosis, there's blood clots. This is obviously to do with AstraZeneca, and they quote Emmer Cook, who is from the European Medicines Agency, saying it's plausible that the appearance of these clots after vaccination with AstraZeneca is linked to the immune system response to the vaccine. Okay, so that's what the European Medicines Agency is saying. Now, of course, the MHRA had this to say. We've received a very small number of reports. This first quote is from a couple of weeks ago of an extremely rare form of blood clot in the cerebral veins. But today's response from the MHRA is this. The MHRA has concluded that the evidence of a link with COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca is stronger, but more work is still needed. So they're not prepared to go the whole hog and say there is a definitive cause here, but they're saying that the evidence is certainly stronger. But here's what they say. The MHRA is not recommending age restrictions in COVID-19 vaccine, AstraZeneca vaccine use. Okay, so the MHRA is not recommending age restrictions, but the JCVI is the JCVI has advised it is preferable for adults aged under 30 with no underlying conditions to be offered an alternative to the AstraZeneca vaccine where available. So the Joint Committee on Vaccine and Immunization wants age restrictions. The MHRA is saying, no, we don't need age restrictions. But look at the age restrictions the JCVI is proposing for adults aged under 30. Now, they're not talking about children, but in fact, if you listen to the government rhetoric over the last couple of days, it's been about risk versus reward. So the government position is that if you're over a certain age, over 50, for example, you're at much greater risk of death from COVID-19 than death from the vaccine, or you're at much greater risk from serious complications from COVID-19 as opposed to serious complications from the vaccine. But if you're under 50, or at least the JCVI saying under 30, they're saying that therefore your risk of death or serious injury from COVID-19 is so low that compared to the risks involved with taking the vaccine, that the risk-reward offer isn't there. So you've got to, therefore it's better not to take the vaccine under that age. So first of all, they're acknowledging that COVID-19 is not a major danger to anybody under 30. It's not going to cause your death. It's not going to cause any significant side effects. And therefore, even though they claim that the side effects are very few with respect to AstraZeneca, they are still more than otherwise. So that's what the British are saying. We want to stop people taking AstraZeneca for the younger age groups. What are the Europeans saying? Well, here is Emmanuel Macron. Over 55, don't have your second dose of the vaccine. So in Europe, they're saying it's the older age groups that shouldn't be taking AstraZeneca because it's causing many more adverse reactions in the elderly.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because when you get older, does your immune system get stronger or does it get weaker? Has it been worn down from other toxins and chemicals over the course of your life, right?
So, but the question, Patrick, is who's right? Is the European position correct that older people should take it, or is the British position correct that younger people shouldn't take it? If you take that together, it first of all says that nobody should take it.
Yes.
But my question here is, what is the British government's position here? It's all right for elderly people to die. Is that what they're saying? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're saying, but they certainly seem to be taking the position it's fine.
Well, the French position is quite common sense oriented, isn't it? Is why introduce another risk into the situation, into the matrix that wasn't there before?
Right.
And if you look at the actual statistics, Mike, the data shows that not just under 30s are at no risk. Pretty much everybody from almost under 70s and below, if you look at the statistics, even if you're between 50 and 70, you're much more likely to fall ill from a host of other things rather than COVID-19. So this has been really blown up and exaggerated in the media now for 12 months. We'll talk about that later.
Well, we must not forget, Patrick, that the average age of somebody dying from COVID-19, this is according to the government statistics, is 84, and the average age of somebody dying from any other cause is 82. So actually, you're much better off if you get COVID, it seems.
You'll live longer,
yes,
according to the
statistics.
And
yeah.
lastly, Mike, how can the government, on the risk-reward issue, how can the government claim that how could they know what the risk is on the vaccines, the long-term risks, when they've just knocked it out in 9 months?
They don't.
They don't, but
No.
they're saying that it's 100% safe.
Yes.
They're saying it's 96%. Or no, the pharmaceutical companies are saying that and telling the government, and the government's repeating it, and the media is repeating it. Where is it coming from? From the manufacturers. Do you trust the manufacturers with these broad claims of total safety and total efficacy? For one, looking at their record, Mike, as we discussed on the last program, there's a lot to be desired there.
If the pharmaceutical companies were so certain of their position, they would not be hiding behind immunity from prosecution for adverse reactions and deaths and so on. It's as simple as that.
And the media wouldn't be pushing so much propaganda to try to twist people's arms.
Yes.
That it is safe, obviously.
So let's just remind you that, well, actually on Wednesday, Brian suggested that No Smoke Without Fire Part 4 would be available immediately after today's news program. In fact, it's going to be premiered at 8 p.m. tonight on the UK Column website and also on the YouTube channel. This is another dive into the MHRA's yellow card statistics on adverse reactions with former NHS nurse Debbie Evans. Do watch that later on if you can. and maybe they'll put some additional detail on what some of the things we've just been talking about. If you like what the UK column does and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community, and there are options to help us out there. That would be very much appreciated. And please do share our material that you find on the usual platforms. Now, Patrick, that takes us back into the psychological attack. Now, we did mention this briefly on Wednesday, but let's hear your position on it.
Well, we know that you covered this, but I just wanted to quickly go because I think this is this is going to lead us into what we're going to be talking about. This was the big story in the Telegraph, State of Fear, how they used covert tactics to sort of work below the conscious level, as it were. But let's just take a look again at some of the highlights of this, because this is very important. This document, which was handed to SAGE when lockdown began last March, the government using covert psychological strategies, operating below the public's level of awareness. This is really, really key. This is what the government has done. Concerned that many people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. And again, just a review of what's in the document itself, a substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened, they say here. This is from SPY-B. And it could be that they are reassured by the low death rate in their demographics group. We were just talking about that. And the perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased among those who are complacent, using hard-hitting emotional messaging. To be effective, this must also empower people by making clear the actions that they can take to reduce a threat. Of course, the key words here: personally threatened. This is government being advised to personally threaten people with hard-hitting emotional messaging. This is propaganda. We'd give it a blue rosette, but we'll get on to that later here. But here's the key, Mike. I looked at this. This is important. Empowering. So they're saying that to be effective, this must also empower people. That is internal propaganda of them propagandizing each other. This kind of internal virtue signaling within the government to say, hey, what we're doing is right. They literally have to propagandize each other as well. So this brings up a lot of questions, Mike, is what's going on here? And then just finally, the same document presented a grid of 14 options for increasing compliance, which include use media to increase a sense of personal threat. The press are deeply involved in this, aren't they? And funded as well.
Yes.
And also a tactic which was seen as having a high effectiveness through spillover effects could be negative here. And of course, you did introduce this last year, Mike. This was an article written by one of your staffers here in,
by me, actually.
in May 2020, COVID coercion. Now, you and Brian really kind of opened this conversation up really before anybody else did. So we encourage people to go back to the UK Columns website. There's a number of good pieces, as well as Brian's psychological attack reports, video report series as well. But just back to the offending article here, the daily diet of statistics and deaths, hospitalizations, and COVID cases has been so effective that compliance with lockdown has gone far beyond what ministers expected, as we reported in the past as well. So they can't believe how effective this has been. But the problem with fear, this is the author here, Gordon Rayner, the problem with fear, as one behavioral scientist said on Friday, is that you can't turn it on and off like a tap.
Well, I think you can turn it on like a tap, because I think they've been very successful at doing that. Turning it back off again is a lot harder.
It is. This has affected people on a deep level, psychologically. This is, I think, damaged people for years to come. So, and again, there's no scientific studies based on whether lockdowns are effective, social distancing are effective, and it's debatable what difference masks make either or have made. We only have to look at the control group, which is Sweden right now, who hasn't really done any of that, and they're perfectly fine and have been normal from the beginning. So, but again, let's not talk about Sweden. No, the world is only your little sort of keyhole world that you're looking through here with the help of the government and the media here. And I want to point to this. This might be, Mike, in my opinion, one of the best articles written that I have read in the last 12 months. This is from the Conservative Woman here, and the headline is "A Very Convenient Pandemic." This is by author Daniel Miller. I could read the whole thing, Mike, on air, and I will do probably on Sunday, because it's just an extraordinarily well-written piece here. Let's just take out a couple of highlights. This is from Daniel Miller. So far, the theater of the pandemic has been organized as a campaign of psychological manipulation with policies conceived to nudge compliance by alternately dangling rewards, which are usually snatched away and making threats.
Yeah.
Is that a fair description of what we've seen?
Bang on, yes.
Okay. And he goes on, this campaign has also featured systematic censorship and intimidation directed against some of the most accomplished scientists in the world. That is absolutely true. And then finally, what is needed in the meantime is urgently unwind the cycle of compliance, beginning with the mass removal of masks here, extending to the deconstruction of the narrative and culminating in the total disobedience against the tyranny now represented by this illegitimate and shameful government. Strong words by author Daniel Miller, Mike, but I mean, it really is reflecting a lot of the frustration that we're beginning to see now, not just in the usual anti-lockdown crowd, but also in the professional class as well. A lot of middle-class people, professionals, barristers, people working in industry, they're now seeing that they've really been taken for a ride by the government and the media with pharmaceutical companies in the background.
Yes. Now, obviously, pubs to some degree will be allowed to open from Monday. Well, in the media today, right across the media, they were talking about the use of QR codes and track, test and trace and so on. So I just want to remind everybody what the latest guidance is, because actually the media was suggesting that it's quite a bit stronger than it is. They were suggesting that people will have to hand over their phones to the person serving them in the pub and have their phone inspected to make sure that you have registered properly. So let's just look at what the guidance actually says. It says that venues have to download and print the new QR code poster because apparently the app has been shown to reduce cases. Well, I'm not sure what the evidence is for that, but nonetheless, that's what they're saying. It goes on to say that from the 29th, regulations regarding venue check-in are changing. That's from the 29th of March. Even though people couldn't go to venues, really, that only starts on Monday. All visitors will be required to check in to enter hospitality venues, not just one per group. So if you remember, it used to be, if you were in a group of people, one had to check in. And then if there was a positive test, then test and trace would track down everybody else that was with you at that point. But now everybody has to check in. And this really seems to be what's the basis of the claims in the media this morning, that people will have to hand over their phones to the venue staff in order to have it confirmed that you did actually check in. Frankly, there is no venue that has enough staff to be able to, even though with social distancing and so on, the number of patrons in their venues will be down. They still aren't going to have enough staff that have the time to be manually checking everybody's phone. But what this hints at, Patrick, is something a bit insidious. The idea that the owner or a staff member in a venue has the authority to, is your phone not your personal property with your personal data on it, that they would have the authority to actually inspect the contents of your phone. This is hinting at something much deeper.
Well, it's also hinting with a fundamental flaw in this proposed system, isn't it? That it has to cross the line. It literally have to cross the line of your personal items and effects, right?
Yes.
So in America, that would be a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
But we have similar principles in this country as well. This is similar to the invasion of privacy or invasion of liberty that vaccine passports represent, for example, and so on. So we're heading down a dangerous path here, and we need to stop.
So the concern, Mike, isn't really about COVID. Apparently, the government's more concerned about being able to track people. And has anybody proven that the track and trace? How many people have they actually caught with a live viral infection through the track and trace program? I mean, I bet you can
count them in one hand, probably.
I'm telling you, how much money did it cost?
30 billion.
30 billion. Is that good value for the money?
No. So let's head over to Denmark then, and well, let's translate this headline. And what does it say? Cheat with Corona Pass. It undermines all confidence in the system. And so this report is suggesting that, in fact, and it's interesting, on the BBC yesterday, somebody was commenting on the Today programme that at the back of all this is an IT system. Will the IT systems be fit for purpose? Well, the Danish here suggesting that they absolutely will not be fit for purpose. And what this article is saying is that really it's very easy for you to fake your results. You could take any of the tests that you'd done and present them as if they were current valid test results, which would give you a negative result and therefore a nice big green tick. But when in fact that wouldn't be your most recent result at all. So eminently hackable seems to be the answer for the Danish, and we'll see what happens in this country.
Well, whenever you have a problem like that flag up, Mike, of course the gods of tech usually weigh in and say, "Ah, don't worry, we've got a better system, a foolproof system." But we need money.
Yeah.
We need money. We need another couple $100 billion, and we'll develop you a perfect Microsoft global, ubiquitous, bulletproof COVID passport pass, all singing and dancing.
This is a hugely competitive market already. Many tech companies wanting to get in on it. The government, of course, already funding some startups to get involved in this market. So it's clear this problem isn't going away. What is interesting is that we're now starting to see a massive pushback from the hospitality industry and the airline industry. I think that it might be wise for us as individuals to start offering some of these companies there's some support where they are pushing back against this idea. And the social media is a good place to start because, of course, we can tag these companies in our posts. And
Weatherspoons was very vocal about lockdowns at the beginning, right?
Yes.
Especially the head of the company. I wonder where he stands on the issue of vaccine passports, Mike. That will be interesting to find out in the coming weeks.
Well, wherever he stands, maybe some encouragement in a particular direction
Absolutely.
would be a useful exercise.
It'll be very interesting.
Yes. Well, let's head over to the States and still on vaccine passports. What's Rand Paul been up to?
Well, this is a Kentucky senator. He's very outspoken. You've seen his public clashes with Anthony Fauci, which we've covered on previous programs here. And he's taking a very strong position on this. He's one of the few, I think, principled U.S. senators here, Republican from Kentucky here. And he's saying that I believe that if the American people don't act soon to put an end to this creeping authoritarianism, then we may never regain the freedoms we once had. He's very serious about this warning, and he goes on to say, our nation is now in danger of the lockdown mafia's creeping fascism staying with us forever if we don't stand up and resist. Calling it the lockdown mafia. I think that's an apt description here. And then he goes on, and the newest paragraph comes in the form of the so-called vaccine passports. These would determine your social standing and dictate how you can engage in your everyday life. And finally, to wrap it up, we can't let government tyrants and media fearmongers push us into accepting this terrible idea that we need their permission to go back to our lives, says Senator Rand Paul here. This was sent out to his constituents in a letter, which I have as well. That's where that quote is coming from. You can subscribe to his regular newsletter and things like that on his website. But
is he the only person that's taking this definitive stand, or how much support has he around him
on this issue? Not at the moment. He is the lone voice that's specifically calling it out and totally rejecting it. But I think others may come on board if they see that their constituents, that their electorate is also making those same noises. And then you'll see senators, probably the Republicans first before the Democrats. This is becoming more and more of a partisan issue now between Republicans and Democrats. The idea of vaccines, vaccine passports, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Right. Roll up get your free COVID test here. Now, of course, the announcement was made a couple of days ago that we're all going to be able to get access to 2 free COVID tests a week, every one of us. So the campaign has begun today to really get us engaged on this. So the public are going to be urged to take part in the next step safely and start regular testing as part of a new campaign across TV, print, outdoor, and digital media. So if anybody's in any doubt about why the mainstream media is not asking any challenging questions of the government about what their policies are and so on, that's the reason. The massive amount of money, of advertising money that's going into TV, print, outdoor, and digital media at the moment from the British government media relying on this money to stay in business. So the press release says that assets will be made available to workplaces and community spaces to encourage a new testing habit. From today, Friday the 9th, everyone in England will be able to access free, regular, rapid COVID-19 testing. So these are the Chinese-made COVID testing kits.
You can see the little USB drive there. It's a piece of plastic that is actually lighter than the USB drive. I don't know, is there anything in it?
Well, there's a little bit of filter paper, and you drop the results into the dot at the bottom, and it filters up through the filter paper. And it's a bit like a pregnancy test. So if as it filters up the filter paper, there's a line that changes color, and depending on the color of the line depends on the test result.
So there's a computer in there, Mike, that's really sophisticated,
Yeah.
and it can identify the genome of the coronavirus, right? Is that how it works?
Well, of course not, but that's the implication. It's a rapid test. It is fantastic stuff.
Approved by the Communist Party of China, by the way.
Yes.
Literally.
Well, yes.
When in the packaging.
In the packaging, you get your Communist Party of China stamp that says that's been quality controlled.
No joke.
No, we're serious.
Look at it yourself.
So let's just say, alongside the rollout of the vaccine, they say regular testing is an essential part of the easing of restrictions, helping identify variants. How does it do that? How does it do that? Is there any evidence that these rapid tests are capable of identifying variants?
Variant
of course they're
specific. No, you got to be kidding me. So where are these claims coming from?
From the government.
Are they just making it up?
Yes.
They're literally just making it up. I think a lot of people are just completely out to lunch on this and pretty much believe everything that the government says.
It is getting very difficult to keep a straight face when we talk about this stuff. Let's look at what Matt Hancock had to say about this. He said around 1 in 3 people have coronavirus without any symptoms. So getting tested regularly is one of the simplest and easiest ways we can scam you all. Of course, he didn't say that. He thought that as he was making this statement. What he actually said was one of the simplest and easiest ways we can keep ourselves and our loved ones safe. So that, of course.
What does he mean, have coronavirus? Does he mean have an active infection, or could potentially test PCR positive because they have a few dead nucleotides floating around in their system?
You're asking 2 difficult questions. He wouldn't be able to answer that, Patrick. He wouldn't be able to answer that. So don't worry. It gets better, because from Monday, the 12th of April, people who have been in contact with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 can now get a PCR test during their 10-day self-isolation period, whether or not they have symptoms. So let's say you were to test positive. I'm required to self-isolate for 10 days. I'm now allowed to go out to go and get a PCR test during that 10-day self-isolation period, because Corona doesn't know whether I'm self-isolating or not, and he doesn't know that when I go out, I could be spreading to other people.
And if you don't have symptoms, what happens to the result of the PCR test? Where would it trend, Mike, in terms of potentially being a false positive, if you're asymptomatic?
Well, first of all, if you're asymptomatic, but also if the incidence of the virus is low in the general population, then the incidence of false positive goes up significantly. So
as high as over 90%,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And so why would you want to take a PCR test if you were asymptomatic? If you looked at it, that's the risk. You could actually get a false positive. Why would you want to take it? So Matt Hancock is imploring people to put themselves into a false positive trap, right?
He might want me to take it because that helps them drive their narrative that there's increasing levels of cases.
Because you could become a case.
Yes, I can become a case, yes.
But not an infection.
Indeed. Okay, and then of course the other news is all about travel. So let's have a look at Grant Shapps. There he is. He's produced a wonderful little video clip, and
it's lovely, isn't it? It's out in the back garden, Mike. He's got a swinging chair in the back, and look, he's wearing like a nice jumper, and it's all very casual, isn't it?
It was very casual, and they even had wind noise there, so it came across as being something really grassroots and edgy, authentic. But of course, what's he announcing? He's announcing a framework to chart the safe return of international travel, and so they're creating a new traffic light system. Now, we've only seen about 4 other traffic light systems over the last 12 months, but this new traffic light system will allow countries to be either green, amber, or red, and that will decide whether you have to self-isolate or quarantine when you come back from those countries or not. But of course, none of this begins until I think it's May the 17th is when the complete ban on international travel is lifted.
And what's the methodology on this traffic light system? Is it just arbitrary? They could just call anything red, green, yellow?
Yes, indeed.
They can just
make it up.
Literally, they could change their metrics as well, couldn't they?
Of course, and that's what they will do. And as we've seen, we saw that last summer as well. As we've seen last summer, they will change the metrics while people are in country. So people that think that it's been safe to go to France or to Germany or to wherever it happens to be will find themselves in a position where suddenly the rules have changed, and then we'll see these efforts for stampedes for people to get back to the UK before the new rules come in.
Because there was a media report of an outbreak of cases in a shopping mall in Dusseldorf with 13 people tested positive, and all of a sudden Germany's traffic light goes from green to red, right?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yes, of course it is. But what it is it comes back to the psychological attack. What it is a psychological attack on people, and people are never allowed to relax. So they go away on holiday. They think they're going to get 2 weeks of relaxation on some sunny beach somewhere. No, because a week into it, there's going to be some announcement which will completely, and of course people will be wondering about this while they're away and stressed as a result. But we don't need to worry, Patrick, because 100,000 lives have been saved by the vaccination program.
Or 10,000.
Sorry, 10,000. Yes, thank you very much. I was
get a job with the government with that sort of slip.
Exactly. So 10,000 lives have been saved. I just wanted to remind everybody of the methodology of this, because that's this week's figure. Last week, it was when we looked at the impact, it was 6,100 deaths prevented. This was on the report. Was I think maybe this was 2 weeks ago. So it's gone from 6,100 deaths up to 10,000.
How on earth could they improve that? Like, how could they actually scientifically prove
Right,
that?
well, let's just have a look at how they do it. Remind ourselves what the methodology was, because here it is. Both the lockdown and the vaccination program are likely to have impacted on the incidence of COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Therefore, there are challenges in estimating the impact of either intervention alone. They said vaccine effectiveness against mortality was based on the most recent Public Health England estimates of effectiveness of a vaccine. So in other words, they modeled it. They modeled it, Patrick.
Modeling.
This is not real. In order to allow for the time taken to develop an immune response to vaccination and for a mortality endpoint, we assumed it would take 31 days before the effect of vaccination on deaths is observed. And using a dynamic age-structured model, it has been continually matched to national and regional data throughout the pandemic. We compare simulations with and without vaccination. So this is not a real figure. It is complete fake news and propaganda, and it should have had your rosette on it.
Oh, next time it will, don't you worry.
But yes, so this is a model similar to the types of models that we've seen used to justify lockdown and so on.
Now, the Grant Shapps video, which you showed, Mike, very happy clappy, right? So clearly the government has basically brought on a new media company, probably a new contractor, to produce real happy clappy videos. The latest one Boris Johnson put out had this kind of, preschool music going on in the background and trying to make Boris seem like he's a kind of authentic, kind of laid back sort of, benevolent dictator or whatever. So we just took a piece of this and listened to what he's saying. Boris Johnson's actually admitting that people who are vaccinated can't meet indoors, Mike. This is the Prime Minister of Britain. Why? Because the vaccine doesn't work, doesn't prevent transmission. Listen to this.
And next, someone asks, can I now meet my friends and family members indoors if they are vaccinated? And there, I'm afraid the answer is no, because we're not yet at that stage. We're still very much in a world where you can meet friends and family outdoors under the rule of 6 or 2 households, and even though your friends and family members may be vaccinated, the vaccines are not giving you 100% protection, and that's why we just need to be cautious. We don't think that they entirely reduce or remove the risk of transmission.
So there you go.
So the vaccines don't remove or reduce the risk of transmission?
No, they are leaky vaccines. That's what a leaky vaccine is.
That's the British Prime Minister,
yes,
right?
Yes.
That's the one pushing vaccines every 5 minutes on the press.
Look, Patrick, you've got to appreciate that vaccines are the way out because they work.
The only way out.
Except they're not.
Right, and there's the British PM, again,
Yes.
admitting that in a happy clappy government propaganda video.
Yes.
That should have got a blue rosette as well.
It should. Well, let's head over to the United States then. 246 vaccinated residents diagnosed with COVID, 3 dead.
Well, this is just another example, Mike, and this isn't just in Michigan as well, but told that the vaccines are miracle vaccines and that they're the only solution to freedom, our path to freedom, etc. And then we're seeing all these stories come out. And there's a number of deaths as well, and I know they're going to say, well, in comparison to the amount of people who've taken it, it's just a blip on the radar screen, a la blood clots and everything else. But how do they know exactly what the real numbers are? Are doctors really reporting people with comorbidities or people who maybe have triggered some sort of a health or autoimmune crisis because of vaccine? We don't know, because the VAERS system in the US, Mike, is as riddled with problems fundamentally
as the MHRA,
as the yellow card system in the UK. So again, you won't know. But here's the main point. It is, and this is brought up in this report, was admitted, this was on NBC, I believe, and basically the question is, can employees, can they take legal action against their employers if they require them to be vaccinated to be working, basically? Some people are getting fired in America, as they are in Israel, not being allowed to work because they're not vaccinated. Is that actually legal? And listen to this very closely.
This is the right one.
Yeah, I think it's the emergency use authorization video.
Okay.
During a news conference yesterday, President Biden acknowledged that Republican men
Sorry, we miscued that. That's
Fauci. We'll have to go back to him later. So I'm not sure if we actually
right. Okay. No, I've got this. Yes, here we go.
Pfizer and Moderna built their COVID vaccines with a new kind of technology that's never before been licensed in the U.S. Also, because an EUA is not a license, there is a legal question as to whether you can mandate an emergency authorization.
Well, they're not a fully licensed product. So the ability to require your employees to be vaccinated will be highly controversial. In fact, I would argue that an employer cannot require you to be vaccinated with anything other than a fully licensed product.
Mandatory vaccination protocols, therefore, may have to wait until the FDA completes the entire approval process for the COVID vaccine.
Well, that's quite a statement at the end there, because, and of course, this is a debate that's been going on in this country as well. Can your employer mandate the vaccine or fire you if you refuse to take it? But none of the discussion I've seen in this country has been talking about the emergency approval of the vaccines. That's quite an interesting position to take.
The government's Achilles heel, Mike, on this is the emergency use authorization. They rammed it through without going through proper testing and research, observation protocols over years. Instead, they said there's a pandemic on, everyone needs to get it, quote, to save lives, and they've rammed it through. That's left the government and businesses totally exposed to lawsuits because it is an unlicensed product, is not a fully licensed vaccine. You're compelling people to put something in their body that's not even a fully licensed product. And so, and again, it's not going through the same paces that other products have gone through in the past.
Right.
Because there's a fear, an overriding fear of a, quote, pandemic. That's the Achilles heel of government and also of corporations who are going to be trying to coerce people into a vaccine passport situation. So looking at here's the vaccine passport issue, Mike, is created something that's really looking more and more like the divided states of America here. And so we'll look at a report here that I'm not sure if we'll have the right report or not.
Yeah.
But is it?
Yes, it's today. Yes,
yeah,
that's it.
Today program.
Yeah.
So the reason we chose this because it's an absolute masterclass in propaganda. What's happening? The mainstream media have painted themselves into a corner over the last 12 months, and they don't know what to do. Now they're tripping all over themselves. Listen, watch, and listen closely.
Call it a COVID conundrum. In states with the strictest measures in the country, like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and much of New England, cases are on the rise. While in the South, states like Arkansas and Texas that have reopened businesses and ripped away mask mandates are seeing their numbers drop. So what might explain the apparent contradiction? One theory, differences in testing rates. Alabama has experienced one of the biggest dips in reported infections, more than 50% in 2 weeks. But it's also dead last in the U.S. for COVID testing, only 56 tests per 100,000 people. That's a fraction of what you'll find in places like Vermont, Massachusetts, and New York, where numbers are surging. How much does lack of adequate testing have to do with the numbers that we're seeing right now?
When you don't test, you're blind. And when you're not testing, you have a false sense of what the real problem is in your community.
Another theory, COVID fatigue. In Michigan, where people are just coming out of lockdown for the first time in months, cases are up more than 100% as demographics shift.
What's different in this wave is these are younger individuals between the ages of 30 and 60, the vast majority of which are not currently vaccinated.
Texas, on the other hand, began reopening its doors months ago and just jammed 40,000 people into the Rangers ballpark, many without masks.
A lot of individuals in the southern part of the U.S., and especially here in Texas, have already been exposed to the coronavirus. So many individuals already have coronavirus antibodies.
That leads us to the risky behavior we've seen in places like Miami Beach, Florida, where numbers have only increased slightly. And theory number 3, that young people are acting as carriers, as doctors say they're returning to other states, taking the virus with them.
Those are the least likely to show up for testing. And when those younger individuals infect older individuals or more vulnerable individuals, that takes time.
Bottom line, health experts say the falling figures in the South might be giving a false sense of security.
Do medical experts worry is emboldening those leaders who said this is a good idea to loosen restrictions?
We worry about if there's a perfect storm brewing. If we remember, this virus always takes 10 to 14 to 21 days to develop. We might just be seeing the early effects of that right now.
Yeah, a lot of those southern states are also quite a bit warmer, too, so people are outside might be a little bit safer. What about the variants? That's got to play a role here, too, Sam.
A significant role. Michigan, for example, Savannah, has a very high prevalence of the UK strain. That's also true of states like Minnesota. Both of them have seen cases skyrocket. But Savannah, there are outliers as well. In Florida, where I am, there are more documented cases of the UK strain here than any other state in the country by far. And yet, so far, a 17% increase in the last 2 weeks. Very small compared to some of these other states. Savannah?
All right, Sam, thank you.
We've identified the culprit, Mike. It's the UK variant.
Yes.
That's what's holding people in Florida hostage. So that brought up 3 important points, Mike. One is they admitted that the more you test, the more, quote, cases you get. So the testing drives the pandemic or the perception of a pandemic. They also admitted that it might be herd immunity. In other words, more people have been exposed to the virus. Therefore, there's going to be less, quote, infection. So they've admitted that testing drives the pandemic. They've admitted that natural herd immunity actually exists, especially amongst young people. And they said it's safe. It's more safe to be outside. Even Boris Johnson admitted this in his Happy Clappy video, if you go and look at the full video online. So that it's better to be outside. What have they been telling us for the last 12 months? To stay indoors, right?
Yes.
And that's not exactly healthy. Now the narrative has switched. Now they're giving up on some of these points that we've been saying for the last 12 months.
But the one that struck me was this idea, this false sense. If you don't test, you're flying blind. You get a false sense of security, perhaps. But Patrick, there's only one statistic that doesn't lie, and that's all-cause mortality. And the question that we've been asking from the beginning of this is, sorry to put it this way, but where are the bodies? And we do not have the levels of death which demonstrate that there is a pandemic going on. We have a narrative that tells us there is. We have a testing regime which produces numbers which suggest certain things. But
spurious claims about variants constantly being put
out. But we still don't have the people ending up in their boxes. It's as simple as that.
Yes. Where is the pandemic, right? Where's the pandemic? So now this is becoming more of a, is this the GOP video?
The GOP one?
Yeah, the GOP, it's not that one.
It's this one, yeah.
Yeah, it's this one. Now it's becoming a partisan issue in America. It's now officially, the media is starting to parse this.
Right.
Republicans, anti-vax, anti-vaccine passport, Democrats, pro-lockdown, pro-vaccine.
Right.
Pro-vaccine passport. Watch this.
During a news conference yesterday, President Biden acknowledged that Republican men appear to be reluctant to get inoculated. Last month, a Marist poll in partnership with NPR and PBS NewsHour found 49% of Republican men said they would not take the vaccine, when it's available to them. The president's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, addressed concerns surrounding the reluctance on CBS This Morning.
We're putting such a big push in trying to get people to be convinced to get vaccinated. You know, we have this COVID-19 community core, which is getting trusted messengers, be they clergy, sports figures, athletic figures, people that the community trusts and look up to.
So you're getting the same treatment we're getting with all the celebrities coming out, really trying to push home this message: you must take the vaccine.
And they're not coming out on their own volition. They're being organized by government. We'll show you what that program looks like in the US in a minute, but just a reminder, some of the Republican governors here, Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, basically banning vaccine passports in the states, actually banning businesses from requiring people to show their vaccine status before they get in. DeSantis saying vaccination passports reduce individual freedoms and will harm patient privacy. He's saying here. So that's the leading Republican candidate, by the way, for 2024. Should Donald Trump not win, he would be the favorite, by the way. So Florida's been open for a while. And of course, Texas here, Governor Greg Abbott, he has also passed an order banning vaccine passports, but only in a government and public sense. In other words, Greg Abbott, being the consummate conservative, is saying that he can't tell businesses what to do and what not to do. He'll say, we'll let the market decide. And I have an idea of where the market's going to go in Texas on that issue. But that's to show you how divisive this is becoming. So the media is starting to separate, and they'll start attacking Republicans or attacking people, conservatives, for being, quote, anti-vax or holding the rest of the country hostage. You see how this is beginning to shape up. Now, just a quick look at the old normal here. Well, we got a little look at it in Texas. Ranger Stadium, look at this, 40,000 plus people. Most of them, by our accounts, are not wearing masks, okay? A full house. This was absolutely sent horror chills. This has sent horror chills down the spines of people in Washington, certainly the Biden administration. Fauci is just completely losing it over this. And so he was asked about this scene, Mike, on a recent MSNBC program here. This footage from Fanatics View, by the way, great YouTube channel. But listen to Anthony Fauci comment on this and how he's on the.
There was a lot of concern last month when Texas effectively opened up, dropped all those restrictions and said it's back to life. And if you go to Texas, as you know, it looks like 2019. The restaurants and the bars are full and open. The ballparks are full. And yet we've seen cases and hospitalizations since then continue to tick downward. So what do you make of that as all of us look around and sort of try to consider how safe it is to get back to normal life?
Yeah, you know, it can be confusing because you may see a lag and a delay, because often you have to wait a few weeks before you see the effect of what you're doing right now. You know, there are a lot of things that go into that. I mean, when you say that they've had a lot of activity on the outside, like ball games, I'm not really quite sure. It could be they're doing things outdoors. You know, it's very difficult to just one-on-one compare that. But there's always the concern when you pull back on methods, particularly things like indoor dining and bars that are crowded, you can see a delay and then all of a sudden tick right back up. We've been fooled before by situations where people begin to open up, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden, several weeks later, things start exploding on you. So we got to be careful we don't prematurely judge that.
Yes.
So we can't open up. We can't open up because even if we open up, you don't know what's going to happen in a couple of weeks. Corona could spring out from behind, you know, a building or the bushes or whatever. If some people get together in bars or whatever, you're doing the same thing in here in the UK. Boris is saying the same thing.
Yes.
1 week it's, oh, we're going to open up. Freedom's around the corner, and then it's like, whoa, maybe not. The numbers are concerning us this week. Maybe we should slow it down a little bit. Let's get that traffic light system.
Well, in fact, I saw headlines over the last couple of days because Chris Whitty has been put on the resignation watch because there's an argument between him and Boris allegedly about how fast the lockdown is being lifted. He wants to see the whole thing being pulled back and made much slower, is what the headlines are saying. So this is all sort of just sitting in the background waiting to bite us, that somebody's narrative will gain the upper hand, and before we know it, we're back to square one again.
Why would you want to extend lockdown, Mike? What would be the motivation for that? Let me just guess. To get more vaccines done, right?
Right.
That's really, at the end of the day, it's not about COVID. It's about mass vaccinations, and it always has been.
And behavioral change.
From the beginning.
Yes. So Biden then?
Well, you heard about Fauci talking about the COVID community core, Mike, here. So this is exactly what he was referring to here. This is Kamala Harris, the vice president here. She's cackling as she normally does. And this is about pulling people, union leaders, church leaders, veterans, athletes from the NFL, NBA, NASCAR, even the racing cars. It's a healthy redneck sport, has been co-opted into the new normal. Can you believe it? It's a woke sport now, race car driving in America. So this is it, the community core, and this is what Kamala Harris is saying. You are the people that folks on the ground know and rely on and have a history with, says Vice President Harris. And when people are then making the decision to get vaccinated, they're going to look to you. So isn't this what is happening in the UK as well? Same exact
100%.
sort of program.
Lenny Henry and the like.
So it's drafting in the celebrities, the athletes, to convince people to get vaccinated because the people aren't convinced, Mike. So this is just massive propaganda. Of course, we're going to also give this a Goebbels blue Rosetta as well here. So it's really concerning, Mike, what's going on here with the level of propaganda. And I want to also point to a great article, again, one of the best I've read yet to date, by a writer named Mike Whitney. This is up on Global Research right here. Let's take a look at that. And so the headline is, "You refuse to get vaccinated, but are you ready to be an outcast?" This was just a couple of days ago. And we'll look at what Mike Whitney's written here. "The only way that people can offer their informed consent for vaccination is if they're able to weigh the risks and the benefits for themselves. But that's only possible if they have access to many diverse sources of information, which at present they don't." Fair assessment there. They have to go to alternative media to get that as well. So increasingly, the only message that most people hear is one that is provided by the government in collaboration with industry honchos and other elites. And he goes on as well to describe this: a lopsided nationwide public relations blitz that has relentlessly glorified vaccines while deliberately excluding even the slightest criticism from respected professionals, including top scientists, I might add, does not respect the rights of the people. It's brainwashing, pure and simple. I think that's a pretty fair assessment, Mike. There's so much in this article. It's excellent, and you can really take away a lot, as well as with the conservative women article as well that we showed earlier. So this is totally unprecedented. We're seeing this unprecedented effort globally by corporations, government, and the media to get people vaccinated. Meanwhile, the pandemic, according to the numbers, if there was one, it sort of peaked last April, right? Beginning of last April. And here we are a year later, they're requiring people to wear masks. So to give the visual symbolism that there is a crisis or is a pandemic, lots of masks and other visual reminders. This is what I think is going on right now. Great article by Mike Whitney.
Yes. Well, let's move on to this from the activist post. Now, of course, Israel has been probably leading the way with vaccination, with masks, with their new normal. But their new normal seems to include exclusion of citizens from what might be expected to be a normal sort of remembrance event.
More than that, Mike, Israel is the beta test for the vaccine passport. They're literally running a two-tier society right now. The unvaccinated do not get access to venues, most stores, and are being fired from their jobs. So they're really strict on this. And so the Holocaust Remembrance Day as well, the non-vaccinated are not welcome, even if they are theoretically a Holocaust survivor. They would not be welcome under the new regime. They're absolutely strict. So Israel has been signaling to the globalists, whoever is, front running this campaign, that they are the standard for vaccine passports, that they will enforce a two-tier society in Israel amongst Israelis. Ironically, this is a country that has pioneered the concept of apartheid. So it's actually, to me, not surprising at all that we're seeing them roll this out with such incredible precision. So.
Okay, let's move on to another subject then, and the question of the recent Facebook hack. Now, many people may not know that Facebook was hacked recently, and if you want to know whether you have been a victim of this, if you want to use that word, this website, Have I Been Pawned, will give you the information. I put my mobile phone number into that today, and oh dear, I have my details have been found. So let's have a look and see what it says. Facebook in April 2021, a large data set of over 500 million Facebook users was made freely available for download on the internet, encompassing approximately 20% of Facebook subscribers. The data was allegedly obtained by exploiting a vulnerability Facebook advises they rectified in August 2019. The primary value of the data is the association of phone numbers to identities. Whilst each record included phone, only 2.5 million records included an email address, just 2.5 million. Most records contain names and genders, with many also including dates of birth, location, relationship status, and employer. So that's quite significant from a potential identity theft point of view. But the problem is that Facebook is really taking a pretty bad attitude to it. So as Reuters is reporting here yesterday, Facebook does not plan to notify 500 million users affected by the leak. They're basically saying to hell with that. So I wondered yesterday what could be done about it, since I'm personally affected by it. I got onto the Information Commissioner's office. They're supposed to look after data protection and manage companies that are handling data and deal with these kinds of issues. So what did they tell me on the phone? Well, first of all, I have to contact the company concerned, Facebook. Now I did that, and if anybody wants to do that, what you need to look for, because it's very hard to find, is the form which allows you to contact the data protection officer. It does exist, but it takes a long time to get to.
It's buried.
It is very much buried. Once you've contacted the data protection officer, you then have to give Facebook 30 days to respond, and only then can you, in fact, complain to the Information Commissioner. At that point then, your complaint will go in a queue for 3 months at least before it will actually be categorized in some form, whether it goes to the top of the queue or the bottom of the queue, they can't say, but it'll be 3 months before it's even looked at to decide on a priority. So the Information Commissioner really can't say that they're letting the side down, because I think this was probably the intention from the beginning, whether it's because they're underfunded or they don't have enough staff, whatever it is, the point is they are completely incapable of dealing with these types of data breaches and holding companies to account when they lose their data in this way. And for me, the issue isn't so much the fact that data was lost, it's the fact that Facebook is not reacting to that in any way. They're not informing anybody that it has happened. They're not telling anybody what specific data has gone.
They don't care.
They don't care. And it seems to me the Information Commissioner has a role to enforce the Data Protection Act in this case. Well, really, they're not going to bother. You've got to follow the procedures, dot all the I's, cross the T's. It's going to take months, by which time, well, goodness knows how many identities will be stolen or used for nefarious purposes.
So the whole data protection regime and all that, a lot of it is just a complete sham, isn't it? I mean, they made a big palaver out of it, but what can they really do? What are they really doing with it? Facebook doesn't seem to care either.
My view of the data protection infrastructure in this country and in all countries is that the Information Commissioner maintains effectively a register of databases. So at some point in the future, so the Information Commissioner knows who's holding records, what kind of records they're holding, and at some point in the future, when government wants to invade our privacy even further, they will know exactly where the data that they want access to is held. That's what my view of it is. It's not there to protect my personal information.
The size of that hack, Mike, and the motivation behind it, last thing, do you think that was a state actor, or was it a rogue hacker in the basement? And
I know what it was, because I'm already receiving text messages. I'm receiving on a daily basis now text messages on my mobile phone, which I wasn't receiving before this hack, which is telling me that it could be that a parcel from Royal Mail wasn't delivered, and I've got to click this link in order to arrange redelivery, or it was that my password has been lost with my online bank account, click this link, and so on. So it's these types of emails. You got to click on a link, and then of course they verify certain bits of information which go together with the information they already have. So they're really fishing for additional information that goes with the personal information that they already have.
Huge operation.
Yes, a huge operation, yeah. Yes.
So the issue of masks, this is obviously a big problem everywhere you go. Masks on the ground, masks in the ocean, pollution everywhere. People are just chucking them all over the place. I mean, you walk right out your door, most people, they'll see masks on the ground, right? In
yes.
the parks, just totally disused and left wherever.
You've got a solution?
Well, I don't, but Klaus Schwab does.
Oh, good.
Take a look at the World Economic Forum here. This is their new smart mask. Look at this, Mike. This is wonderful. This is from their Global Technology Governance Summit here. And so this has got multiple layers. That's a CO2 regulator that will tell you if you're getting the right amount of oxygen, if there's too much CO2 buildup, and it's going to communicate with your smartphone. So it's hooked up to an app. So it'll be reporting data real time, constantly about your oxygen, CO2 intake, and that will obviously be processed by somebody, right?
Right.
Probably in the app. So Klaus will have all of the data of how much you breathe and whatnot. And it's got reusable inserts here. Those are sustainable, we're told, so they're Greta friendly. You can change them. And so this is what's called the smart mask, and this is what they're pioneering for the long-term use of masks. So they're planning for people to be using masks for years, okay, with this advanced technology. And then this is obviously playing well with the woke crowd because they're like, well, we don't want to pollute the ocean with the masks. None of these brainwaves are even thinking, maybe we shouldn't be wearing masks. No, no, no. They're like, let's just get a better mask. So this is the insanity of this whole thing right now. But I mean, that's just something else, isn't it? So, but there is a petition with regards to masks in schools in the UK. This is a new petition. We encourage people to go take a look at this and please read it. Share it if you are compelled by what it says, but it's about a ban on the use of face masks in schools. Should children be wearing this? 100,000 signatures triggers a debate in the Commons, Mike.
Yes.
So that's kind of an important issue. Kids are being forced to wear masks in schools, even though children are at statistically zero risk of ever getting ill from the dreaded COVID-19.
And of course, that's another example of one where they said that they were going to do something and then they walked back from it. So they said, well, kids won't have to wear masks after the Easter holidays. And then they suddenly said, well, actually, we're going to make them wear masks after Easter after all. I always found it ironic that they were doing this, bearing in mind that at the same time that children are being encouraged to wear masks, and most of these masks contain plastics or they're made of plastic. Of course, the children are also being bombarded with the message that plastic pollution is extremely dangerous for the environment. But there's no hypocrisy in that position whatsoever.
I saw a documentary, last thing, Mike, from one of the African countries. The kids are wearing these old blue grubby masks, or literally homemade stuff. How hygienic is that? How healthy is that? People in this country are wearing lousy masks. They literally stick them in their pocket, could have mold, bacteria, who knows what, and that's what they're breathing in. So this is not healthy. It's actually posing a risk, I think, to children breathing in microfibers. There's a whole list of risks there. But the children are at zero risk of COVID. So what is this other than legalized abuse of children? I think, is that a extreme thing to say?
I actually don't think it is.
People need to think about this sort of stuff. So.
They do, yes. Okay, well, we have to leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining us, Patrick. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back at the same time as usual, 1 p.m. on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.